So the music you're hearing right now is a famous folk song in the Philippines entitled Filimon. It reflects the impoverished livelihood of a poor fisherman named Filimon. The song conveys a plight of Filimon, who goes to fish every day using hook and line, who gets small fish which he sells in the dilapidated market, and the sale from his catch is just enough to buy him a bottle of coconut wine, with nothing left for his family's needs. So this particular song may have some exaggeration, but it tries to impart a message on the need to help fishers improve their economic status and to get out of the chronic poverty. So the Philippines, for its part, tries to address these needs of the countries of more than 1 million Filimons, considering as well that there are other 57 poor Filimons in the world. So the plight of this fisherman is practically because of the declining ecosystem that we are facing right now, as well as the overfishing. And due to this, we have created MPAs. It has been established way to preserve and conserve the ecosystem of the marine environment. And also as a response to the global demand of protecting 10% of our ocean through the Convention on Biological Diversity by 2020. And that's next year. And we are expecting to protect the ocean by 30% by 2030. And right now, we already have about 17,000 MPAs, and that's about 28 million square kilometers of protected waters. But where do we stand? Are we almost there yet in the 10%? According to protectedplanet.com, we are still at 7.63% of the CBD target. It's still more than 2% of the target, and we only have 1 year left to actually attain this. And this also depends on the database that you're going to use. According to MPA Atlas, we are still at 1.5% of marine protection. And depending on the database that we are using, this is an example of the database being used in the Philippines by Cabral, published in 2014. Here you can see that different databases, these two here are from the Philippines. They actually provide us with different numbers of MPAs. And what is the reason for this? In the Philippines particularly, because of the different definitions being used to mean MPA. We use sanctuary, we use MPA, we use marine park, we use national park, and different other terms. So this particular terms also, the term means the kind of management, the kind of conservation needed. So due to the pressure being put to the different nations to attain the 10% CBD, most of the MPAs right now lack proper management. And according to data, there's only like 2.8% of the established MPAs existing right now which are properly managed. So that means to say, it turns out to be paper parks, or these are areas in the world which only exist in maps and legislation, but they offer little to no protection at all. So paper park was the first defined in a 1991 report entitled Paper Parks to Effective Management, Developing a Target. It defines paper park as a legally established protected area where experts believe current protection activities are insufficient to halt degradation. So from this definition itself, you can see that one of the most important thing, or probably the most important thing with regards to management of MPA, for MPA to be considered effective, is having a working and active management. And then let me present to you my paper for today. It's the gap analysis of management effectiveness of MPAs in the Philippines based on the Management Effectiveness Assessment tool, which is called MPA Meet. I'll be using MPA Meet instead. And let me just give you a quick project background. So this particular project was funded by GEF, Global Environment Facility, primarily with, of course, United Nations also funded this, worth $35 million. It was given to the government of the Philippines through the United Nations Development Program. It aims to include key marine biodiversity areas to improve MPA or MPA network. I will be referring to them as MPAN during this presentation, to have an effective management, and as well as to reduce rapid degradation of marine and coastal habitats. So after the grant was given to them, they established Smart Seas Philippines. on which they identified 5 key marine biodiversity areas in the Philippines. These are the Verde Island Passage, or VIP, Tanyon Strait, Lanuza Bay, Davao Gulf, and Southern Palawan. Each of these are being managed by different NGOs, both international and local NGOs. This is a government office under the Department of Environment. You've got 3 international big NGOs. You've got a local that is also big NGO. Each of them are managing a specific site, while the MSI is University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute is the scientific and academic advisor of the NGOs. And then there's Blue Finance. So we are working with the different NGOs on selecting the most feasible MPAN, most feasible site to deliver the business project. So what did I do during the internship? The first thing I did during the internship was to create a financing feasibility scoring matrix. So I believe Francois will be focusing on this specifically. So there are 3 different big criteria. You have ecological impact, and you look at business impact and legal impact. So these things I will explain to you the importance, especially the legal impact of this particular feasibility. So we use this to know whether a certain site, a certain network is feasible for impact investment. That is what Blue Finance does. So we assess them. We don't just accept. Usually governments come to us, and then we decide whether they are actually suitable for financing by using this particular tool that I developed together with the director of Blue Finance. And it's composed of about 65 different areas that needed to be measured. And one of them is the Management Effectiveness Assessment Tool, or MEAT. So in order for me to assess the MEAT itself, I needed to do the gap analysis for each of the MPAN. That led me to this particular paper that you have with you. All right. So it's a big cycle. So each of the criteria, there are a lot, 65. All the 65 of them needed research. That's why I was working with Francois. Francois and I were working on creating research for each of these criteria for us to be able to actually give the appropriate score for them. All right, so the aim of the project is first to identify the management gaps between the MPA MEAT evaluation to avoid trends of weak and inappropriate management. We want to make sure that we are not building another paper park. Perform gap analysis per MPAN because of the different needs and political motivations for each MPAN. Later on, I will explain to you why it has to be done per MPAN, those 5 sites that I told you about, and provide an overall gap analysis to reflect the overall performance of the MPAs. The third one, I did this for the sake of the presentation, for us to have a bigger picture of what's happening in the MPAs in the Philippines. The second one is the requirement of the United Nations. The project that I did was separate from Blue Finance. It was a commissioned project by UNDP to actually do this analysis, this gap analysis. But we also used it for the Blue Finance project and identified suitable projects. We identified 2, and Francois will talk about those. All right, let's just have a little global context about measurement of management effectiveness. There are different tools available in the market. The measurement of a protected area has been done since 1999. One of the most famous is MET, Management Effectiveness Tracking Tool. So this is not time demanding. It's not human resource demanding. However, if you want to apply for big funds, for GEF or for World Bank, they need to have this MET assessment. But the problem here is that it only indicates whether management is adequate or inadequate. Because for GEF, they don't really need to know whether what is the strong point of the management or what is the weak point of the management. GEF only needs to know whether there is a functioning management in that MPA or not. The third one is the IUC and Conservation Outlook. This is a very detailed assessment, very time-consuming, very labor-intensive. But the only indicator here is it looks at the ecological output, whether there is an increase or decline in the ecosystem. Depends on the objective of the MPA. If there's an increase in biomass or diversity, or there's a decrease. Third one is the RAPAM, or the Rapid Assessment and Prioritization of Protected Area Management tool. This is very quick and easy. It can be used for terrestrial MPA. This is one of the very first ones, actually. It was used for the measurement of wetlands, I believe. This convention on wetlands in Iran, I can't remember the name. Yeah, but anyway, so it's not sufficient to critically measure management effectiveness. That's why it's not being used, it's not very popular nowadays. However, in the Philippines, way back in 2000, they created its own tool because of the different, because of the governance, some of the limitations with regards to funding, the nature of the political situation in the Philippines. They thought that MET is not suitable for to measure the nature of MPAs in the Philippines. First primary reason is MPA MET. It uses governance performance as a proxy to effectiveness. Philippines is a different kind of government structure. It first, probably if you're familiar with the U.S. Structure, it has a central government. The U.S. they call it federal government. I will be referring to this as the national government. So we have a national government, and under the national government, you have the three big divisions. You have the executive, where the president lies, legislative, where the senators lie, they create laws, and you have the judiciary, the courts. And under this national government, you've got provinces. So there are a lot of provinces in the Philippines, and they are being led by governors. Under provinces, you've got municipalities and cities, and they are being led by mayors. So one province could have like a bunch, like 5, 6 municipalities. It depends on the size of the province. It is called a decentralized form of government because from here to here, I would refer to this as local government units, LGUs. From here to here, they are actually free to make their own legislation. They are free to make their own ordinances to support the law of the national government, right? They could, the case of use of plastic, for example. We don't have an existing national law with regards to single-use plastics, but there are municipalities in the Philippines that they created their own ordinances that in that particular city, there should be no single-use plastic. So now we can understand how the decentralization of the government power is. And under each municipalities, you've got the MPAs. There are two kinds of MPA management in the Philippines. One is directly managed by the national government. Okay, so I will refer to this as nationally governed MPAs. This is under the NIPAS. It's called the National Integrated Protected Areas System Act. It's protected by law. So it's both marine and terrestrial environment. So everything from management, it's under the government. Funding is under government. All right, so it's quite difficult for NGOs to penetrate this particular marine part because there are a lot of bureaucracy. And there are also MPAs that are managed both by central government and the local government units. And of course, you've got MPAs which are directly managed or locally managed by the LGUs. Is this clear at this point? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Now, the second point on which why we are, yes.
Look at the timers.
Okay, yeah, okay. Is there no timer here? No. Okay, now for the Philippines, another reason why we're using MET in the Philippines, because this particular MET tool, it measures and provides insights into critical thresholds, indicators, and processes. So this particular tool, you can interpret this in 3 different ways. First one is looking at the overall score. Overall score refers to the effort being exerted by the management in managing the MPA. So if you have a high score, that means to say you are providing greater effort. Second one is management effectiveness level. I'll be focusing mostly on the second one. It uses thresholds that management bodies must undertake to enable effective governance. There are 4 levels for this. And management focus, we can forget about this for now. It's just basically categorizing the different management activities so that they will be able to identify the weaknesses and the strengths. So this makes it different from the MET that only tells you it's inadequate or it's adequate. Okay, due to time constraint, I'm just going to show this to you. These are the criteria for MPA meet. One very interesting here is the presence of legislation. It's here. The presence of community participation is part of the measurement of effectiveness. Okay, it's really very important for me to make you understand how the meet works, because this is the meat of the presentation, and for you to understand. So this is basically the process, the workflow for the meet. It has 4 different levels, and each level you need to satisfy minimum requirements, such as the year of existence and the minimum points. All right? So each threshold, you must be able to satisfy the 4 thresholds for level 1, for example, and so forth, for you to be able to belong in this particular threshold. Example, you are an MPA and you are called to be level 2 MPA, meaning to say you are already year 2 at least, you have attained minimum of 31 points, and you have achieved these 3 thresholds. It's also possible for an MPA to be level 2, but with a score of, let's say, 47 points, and established in year 5. Why? Because this particular MPA has not attained one or all of the thresholds for level 3. So these thresholds are very important in determining the particular level for that MPA. It's possible as well for an MPA to be in level 2, satisfying this, and also satisfying some of the thresholds. Could be, I've satisfied this 2, and I've also satisfied number 4 here and number 3 here. It's also possible to do that, to have that. All right. So, what's my methodology? I did gap analysis for this. It's the comparison of actual performance with potential desired performance. This is a qualitative research of the gap or unachieved thresholds. There are 18 thresholds in that 4 levels. And I reviewed analyzed 85 MPA meet evaluations performed by SmartSys Philippines from 2017 to 2018. I looked at the frequency distribution of each MPAN, and as well as the overall result of the gap. And I compared and analyzed meet score versus level. If we have time, we can actually dig deeply on this. So these are the 5 MPANs that I evaluated. If you notice that it's quite different from the one I presented to you. Oriental Mindoro and Romblon, it's not in the MPAN that was I presented to you from SmartSys, because Oriental Mindoro and Romblon is part of the VIP, or the Verde Island Passage. I was advised by SmartSys to split them into 2 because of the number of MPAs there. There are 36 MPAs inside, so it's quite big. So we decided to split them. And it also makes more sense because these 2 are different provinces. So, and also we removed the Tanyan Strait from the assessment, because Tanyan Strait is a nationally governed MPA. It's being governed by the central government. So there were 85, and this is the size of the total. So I need a gap analysis for each MPAN. I'm not going to go into detail on this because it's very long. If you're interested, it's in the document that I submitted. I made a detailed analysis for each MPAN. And this is a very important assessment, because this is the one that identified the main problem for each MPAN. But for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to give you the overall result of this study. So here you have a graph of the frequency of MPAs per level and average score for each level based on the MPA meet. If you notice here, so this is the average. This is the minimum score that needed to be attained in order to be in that particular level. If you notice here that all the MPAs they actually attain higher than the minimum requirement for each level. They're actually even higher for the next level, minimum requirement. However, most 48%, a big chunk of them, 40 out of 85 MPAs, they still have not attained even level 1. Meaning to say, they have not achieved the thresholds, the 5 thresholds needed to be satisfied for you to be in the level 1. But the average score is actually very high. So what does it mean? What is the interpretation for this? It means that the MPA management are exerting high effort on effectively managing their MPAs, but the effort is not enough to actually respond to the need of those thresholds. So that means to say those thresholds are very difficult to actually achieve, but those are basic thresholds that are needed to be achieved in order to be said effective. And this is just for us to look at. If you take a look at this, almost 75% of the based on area, 75% of the area of the MPAs is not properly managed. Here, and the green, it's a very big. It's 25,000 hectares. It's quite almost 75% of the total study area is not properly managed. It hasn't received any level. So now I analyzed the overall score, the overall management. The overall threshold. What is the biggest gap? I only analyzed 5 of them because there are a lot. 18 is a lot. So I ranked the top 5, and the first one is MPA financially self-sustaining in the last 7 consecutive years, which is it is not surprising. I think this is one of the biggest problems in all areas of conservation. So if you're going to interpret this, it says like there are 12 MPAs not on level 4 which achieve the MPA management financially self-sustaining. What I'm trying to say here is that there are 85 MPAs in the study. 70 of them said we haven't actually had any financial sustainability for the past 7 years. And then it will bring you to 12. There are 12 MPAs which are not in level 4. This particular threshold is level 4 threshold. There are 12 MPAs not on level 4 but attained this particular threshold. They could be in level 2, but then they are self-sufficient. In what way, I will discuss it to you later. And so on. So I'm not going to read that. So IEC sustained over 7 years. It's the second one. It's information education campaign sustenance over 7 years. Management plan incorporated in broader development plans. Enforcement as well as performance monitoring. Now let's go individually on this 5. Still have time?
Benedict, I'm just telling you that you're exceeding time by
Already?
8 minutes.
Already? Okay. I talk a lot then. Okay, sorry. All right, financial self-sustainability. So this is, when I went to a conference in Turkey last month on MedPan, one of, I think he's from WWF, he mentioned that funding is the problem, the solution to the problem. And I think we all agree on this. So there's also always this lack of sufficient funding, and this hinders the management of the MPA. And of course, we have different kinds of funding. So I'm going to just skip most of this. I cancel out this 4 here, but these are like a very popular form of funding. I cancel it. Why? Because it doesn't provide us with sustainable funding. So when the grant is out, there's no more source of money. And the blue carbon debt for nature swap, it's very time consuming. It took TNC about 10 years, and they spent almost $1 million to actually do that debt swap deal with Seychelles. And so you have new forms. You have impact investment, blended finance, performance-based funding, and whatnot. IEC sustainability information education campaign. This is very important in proper management. One of the biggest problems in a building MPA is that most fishermen, most fishers, most people who depend on the ocean, they don't want the idea of MPA because they thought that they'll be restricted on the use of the resources on which they traditionally own, or if ever, they will be fishing farther, much farther from the place where they usually fish. So they are scared of the restrictions that will be imposed. So when you have this sustainable IEC campaign, you are hoping to attract and change behavior of the different stakeholders within the MPA. Management plan and the legal establishment. I wanted to. I'm not going to give you a very big presentation on this. So basically, it talks about the management plan of the MPA should be incorporated in local and national laws for it to have teeth, I would say. All right? So it should be part of the different platforms. It should be integrated on the coastal marine plan example, or the special marine plan of the local government or of the national government, because it defines the rights, obligations, and restrictions that are implementable to all relevant stakeholders. Enforcement is a big problem. When you talk about enforcement, it's not just about policing those who are fishing within the no-fishing zone. It's also about violators of not paying the user fees and whatnot. Right? So it's more on enforcement of the law. Again, if the MPA, if the financial plan, for example, is not in the law and approved by the through ordinances by the local government, it won't have any effect at all on people. You won't be able to catch violators or apprehend violators. So this is an example of a very established. This is the eldest MPA, one of the oldest MPAs in the Philippines. Very established. It's a community-based MPA. I believe in the subject blue growth. You mentioned about Apo Island. It's a very popular community base. So they have the rules there. They put the rules there. They don't tell the people what are the penalty for violating the rules. But then they're saying that if you do this, something will happen. There will be a penalty. There will be a sanction, and people follow. The last one is the performance monitoring the management body. This is very important. So there are different types of performance monitoring. However, I'm going to summarize it. The most important thing here is it has to be done regularly with the most suitable available tool. In the case of the Philippines, doing MPA Meet as the most suitable tool for the Philippines, and it should be done in a more regular intervals. Publications suggest it has to be done every 2 years. This is to make sure that all the objectives are being met, and it's being properly managed, and it's effective. Can I have like a minute to show a video before I do the conclusion? I think this lady here, this is part of the my communication campaign that I did for this NGO. This is a high score maximum. This particular NGO got a high score maximum for the MPA Meet, 84, and it's in level 4. So it's an excellent, and it's in the highest level. It's called Axaline Fish Sanctuary.
diversity, yung dami, yung biomass, na-sustain yung pamamahala dahil sa tuloy-tuloy na aktibong pakikipagtulungan ng bawat ahensya ng gobyerno, yung mga NGOs na tumutulong. Very strong yung community. Maraming challenges sa pamamahala, pero dahil sama-sama at hindi nawawala yung puso sa conservation, tuloy-tuloy talaga yung pag-i-improve at namamantin ng palagi yung pagsalisan.
Right. So she basically summed up my presentation today. So the most important thing with effective management is that there has to be sustainable funding, whatever source. It has to be sustainable. It's not just donation is not the answer to proper management. Legitimizing the management plan and the existence of the MPA itself, regular monitoring of the performance of the management, as well as creating robust information and education campaign to let people, the other stakeholders, know what's happening and what it's for. So that ends my presentation. Sorry for the overtime.